Bum 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 bum. So we are finally going to talk about my boy Soups again. Look how beautiful this statue is. I don't think I showed this off in a video yet. Just wanted to show that off for a sec. We are going to talk about the Christopher Reeve movies finally. And I am going to do this in kind of a weird order that you may not expect. So we are going to do Superman the movie, then Superman 2, obviously, the theatrical cut. And then I'm going to do Richard Donner's cut in its own video. And then I'll do Superman 3 and 4. And then I will talk about Superman Returns, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman. And I'm going to kind of stop there with the Superman movies. But this is an interesting set of videos I'm going to have to do. I feel like most people would just review the different cuts of Superman 2 in their in one video, but I'm not going to do that. I feel like there's enough to talk about in its own video. Superman 1, though, this is a really... How do I talk about this movie? Because I kind of want to approach this the way I plan to approach this video when I review Batman 1989, where I don't think Batman 1989 is a good Batman movie. It's really not. But it's a good movie. And I kind of feel that way about this movie, but it's a little more awkward than that, because where that movie I think is a bad Batman movie because it doesn't get the spirit of Batman or really understand the character of Batman very well. But it is an entertaining, fun blockbuster with cool effects and great performances and great world design and music and other things I like about. We'll talk about that more whenever we get the Batman 2 and I can start reviewing Batman movies. Who knows when the fuck that is, but but I do love this movie. And honestly, I do think this movie does actually understand the Superman character better than you would think. And so I do think in some ways this movie is close to being a good Superman movie. And I think it's because I think the problem with why this movie isn't a great Superman movie, it's the best Superman movie they could have made at the time, so I'm not criticizing that. But I am going to have to criticize it watching it today, because I am watching it with today's context, right? But I'm also going to acknowledge what an achievement this movie was from the past. Because I feel like that's important to acknowledge what movies were when they came out and what they are now. Some movies still hold up. I watched 2001 and A Space Odyssey in the theater a couple days ago. Over 50-year-old movie. Wouldn't even know it watching it, right? Some movies really hold up and you can just feel what they were at the time and what they are now. This movie, I don't know. It's hard to kind of discuss. So I think we're just going to start with the movie aspect of it, and then we'll talk about the Superman aspect in a minute. I think this movie, as a movie, is really cool. And it's just such a great movie. Because back in the day when this movie was made, this movie came out in 1978, had one of the highest budgets a movie had ever had. I think it had like $150 million budget or something like that. It could have been lower than that, I forget. But, that's crazy to think about because we have like commercials for that budget now. There's a movie on Netflix that cost over $300 million right now. Like, it's kind of fucking wild where things have gone. But this is a movie that they literally would just show you the Superman symbol and the poster would say, "You'll believe a man can fly." And that was kind of the whole thing. And this movie was so amazing for its effects and its story and how grand and epic it felt. And I think you feel that watching this movie. Because despite this movie not aging the best effects-wise, it still feels grandiose and epic. And a lot of that does have to do with John Williams' score. But also just the presentation and style of the direction here from Richard Donner and the way he frames everything. And just the performances are all given so much great weight. I mean, I don't really like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. I don't think his character works to be Lex Luthor, but in this movie and the tone and the world it's going for, it's fine and it works well enough. Superman, Christopher Reeves, his performance is so weighty as Clark Kent and and Superman. Marlon Brando gives the right amount. It's actually pretty fucking incredible performance in this movie. Because, man, you feel the tragedy of knowing that his world's going to end. And also having to say goodbye to his son. And what all that means. And it's treated with so much weight, energy, emotion, tragedy. So many mixed emotions. Really conveys that really well. And so all that works to make this movie feels grand and epic and has a great scale to it and is really fun, entertaining. So I think this is a movie that really does work today as a movie. If you know how, there's so many great lines of dialogue in this movie too. With all these powers, I couldn't even save him. So many great things that really work to make a really great movie. And obviously you have to acknowledge this is a movie from the 70s. Effects don't always look perfect. Though I think honestly they age better than you think, because I think the effects in this movie were given so much of their own unique look and style. Like the way the people on Krypton look. Such a unique style that allowed it to still hold up today, even if it does look a bit silly. Superman's flying scenes I still think look great, especially watching this in 4K Blu-ray. But I think where this movie fails is just as a Superman movie. Now we'll move on to the Superman aspect. I think the problem with this movie, when you watch this movie, Superman as a character in this movie is so well done and put together. It's crazy. In terms of some of his lines of dialogue and individual moments, like I mentioned, that great line where he's talking about Pa Kent's death. Spoilers for almost 45-year-old movie, but he talks about with all these powers, I couldn't even save him. Those moments get the spirit of Superman. But I think where this movie really falters is not making Clark Kent and Superman, like, they're distinct characters, but they also have to kind of be the same character. And that's where I think this movie falters writing-wise. Because the thing is, people obsess over Superman's powers and how overly powerful he is and all this stuff. But what they missed the goddamn point is that Superman, as a character, it was a human raised on Earth first. Yeah, he's from another fucking planet, but all that power means nothing when he still has the emotions and feelings that we do, and he has to deal with them just like us. Maybe not the same way, but the emotional Superman stories are great when he's dealing with his own personal conflicts with people. And that's what makes the character relatable and why people like the character. All-Star Superman's a great story about him dying, and things about Superman's moral code that are drawn into question, where lines are drawn into question for Superman. What does he do now? The pain of losing people and how Superman reacts to that. Things like that are here, and there's certain moments of it, but really, you watch Superman, and it's just like he's an invincible god that is just saving people left and right and having a good time. Like, that's... I'm joking a little bit, but I'm also not, because that is really Superman's character. I mean, he does really deal with the pain of losing Lois towards the end of this movie and having to deal with that, and have that crazy shit where he flies into space versus time. Yeah, it's very 70s, very goofy. I get it. You may not like that, and I have my own issues with it, but I do think you just really gotta. You're either there for it or you're not. I get it, but I think the real problem with this is you're not really understanding the who Superman is as a character. And so I do think Richard Donner did have an understanding of the character and liked him, but I think just because the limitations of a movie being made in the 70s, this really wasn't a movie that could really capture that as well as you would like. And it's very unfortunate on that level, because I love Superman. And I do think this movie is a good movie that elements, as a Superman fan, I will always love and appreciate, but there's other elements that I laugh at, and I'm just like, it was the 70s. What can you do? So even in saying that, like, if you've never seen this movie, I would still recommend it to you. Just understand it's a movie from the 70s. There's some goofy aspects. Him, again, running around the planet to reverse time to save Lois. Fucking stupid. It's all silly. By the end of the day, it's like, yeah, this movie is great. As a movie. It's so weird to say that, right? I feel the same way about some of the X-Men movies. Like, they're great movies. Not really great X-Men movies. That doesn't mean they don't have great X-Men parts of the movies, but overall, there is you can tell there's misunderstandings of the characters or leaving out of the characters' identities in some ways. I feel like now we've gotten a better understanding of how to make a great movie and a great version of that character now. Like, I think the Captain America movies are pretty good Captain America movies. And there's still some of those movies that are kind of misfires, like Guardians of the Galaxy on that front, I guess, isn't a great Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But it's a good movie, so, you know, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Same way I love these movies. Kind of an odd review, but I think it's best to kind of explain it like that, because I think these movies, I don't know. And I also will say, Richard Donner is still one of the greatest directors to ever live. R.I.P. You know, The Omen, this, The Lethal Weapon, Goonies. Like, he's just the GOAT. And movies like this really do speak to his level of craftsmanship. I don't think anyone else in the 70s, even Spielberg, could have handled a movie on this scale and made it feel the way it does. Maybe Spielberg, but, or even George Lucas to an extent, but I think even George Lucas, I mean, he just came off of Star Wars this time, and, you know, you can see a lot of the cracks there, and I don't know if he could have really made a movie like this work, but, and I think it just speaks to the volatility and the strengths of who Richard Donner was as a director, that this movie even came out the way it did. This movie, you know, you read up on the history of this movie, I'm not even going to go into it here. This whole movie could have been a fucking disaster, and, you know, in a way that the sequel was, but not in the same way. Let me know your thoughts, like, share, and subscribe.